Welcome, dear dreamer. Tonight we are stepping back in time to Tudor England, to a time of tyrannical kings, court rumors, and secret affairs, where King Henry VIII is retiring for the night into his chamber. If you enjoy these quiet, scandalous journeys through history, tap like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for a new sleepy story every night. Let the court grow quiet now. The page boys have gone. The musicians have stopped. The candles flicker low against the stone. And in the softest room of Whitehall Palace, the King of England is alone, staring at a painting. It's a woman's face, soft, pale skin, reddish gold hair, eyes the color of a calm winter afternoon. Her dress is modest, but regal. Her expression is mild, but not meek. She is not dazzling, but something about her stills the room. Henry VIII leans forward. He studies the lines of her cheek, the way her sleeves fold just so, the trace of gentleness, or perhaps mystery behind her eyes. This one, he says quietly, as if he already knows her, as if a painting can answer back. He's no stranger to marriage. He's had 3 wives already, one beloved and lost, one cast aside, one taken from him by blade and decree, and still no lasting peace, no son strong enough to follow him, no queen to match the vision in his head. Until now. The woman in the painting is Anne of Cleves, a German duchess, a foreign ally, unmarried, untouched, untested, and most importantly, available. He didn't meet her, didn't speak to her, didn't hear her laugh or see her eyes in candlelight. Instead, he sent a painter, Hans Holbein, the finest in Europe. He painted her gently, kindly, perhaps a little flatteringly. And when Henry saw the portrait, something stirred. Desire, yes, but more than that. Hope. He wanted something new. A queen who was quiet, obedient, warm. A woman who wouldn't argue, wouldn't challenge, wouldn't take too much. Anne looked like that, in paint. Let the wind rattle the window panes. Let the fire crackle low. The king sends for his advisers. This is the one, he tells them, his voice steady, his mind made up. They nod, carefully. Because when Henry makes a decision, the safest thing to do is agree. Negotiations begin, not with flowers, with scrolls and seals and messengers on horseback. Anne's brother, Duke Wilhelm of Cleves, accepts, and Anne begins preparing. She speaks no English. She has never left her homeland. She has never seen the sea. And she has never once imagined herself queen of a land she's never visited. But she nods, she listens, and she boards the ship. Let the sails rise now. Let the sea lift gently beneath her. Anne watches the horizon, wrapped in furs. Quiet, not excited, not afraid, just steady. Because Anne of Cleves was not raised to charm. She was raised to endure. In England the court is buzzing. A new queen, foreign but fair, proper, polite, probably perfect. Henry orders everything made ready. Silks, jewels, rooms filled with flowers, and most importantly, a surprise. He tells no one, but he plans it carefully. He'll ride out in disguise, meet her on the road, steal her heart with a joke, a gift, a gallant gesture. That's the dream. That's the story he wants. But stories, as Anne would soon show him, don't always play their parts. Let your eyes close now. Let the sea be still. Anne is on her way. Henry is waiting, and in between them, a portrait that tells a story neither of them will quite recognize. Because this will not be the romance the king imagined. This will be the quiet beginning of something far stranger, and in its own way, far more powerful. Let the English shore rise gently from the sea. It's early morning. Mist curls along the sand. The gulls circle once, then settle, and the wind carries something new across the water, a ship, and aboard it, a queen, or rather, the woman who may soon become one. Anne of Cleves stands at the rail. She doesn't lean forward with excitement, doesn't cry, doesn't gasp at the sight of England. She simply watches, wrapped in a heavy cloak, her expression unreadable. The voyage was long, but Anne didn't complain. She read, she embroidered, she practiced polite English phrases under her breath. And now she waits for whatever comes next. The moment her foot touches the dock, the performance begins. Trumpets, drums, officials in velvet, scrolls read aloud. But Anne doesn't smile, not because she's cold, because she's careful. She was raised in the court of Cleves, a place of formality, of discipline, of duty, not flirtation, not poetry, not charm. Anne was taught to obey, not to dazzle, and Henry, though no one says it yet, is expecting to be dazzled. She is taken to a grand house near Rochester, warm fire, clean linens, a place to rest. But Anne doesn't fully relax, not yet, because she knows she's being watched. And just a few miles away, the king is preparing something special. He wakes early that morning, excited, nervous. He puts on a disguise, a simple cloak, a feathered cap, no crown, no guards. He wants it to feel like a fairy tale. He'll ride in, surprise her, sweep her off her feet. He believes in love at first sight, and he's convinced it will strike the moment their eyes meet. He rides fast, smiling to himself, practicing what he'll say, imagining her reaction, delight, surprise, maybe even awe. He wants her to fall for him, not the king, him. But Anne wasn't told to expect a disguised visitor. So when he enters the room, unannounced, unrecognized, she simply stares. Not coldly, not rudely, just puzzled. She curtsies, of course, says something polite in German accented English, then looks away. Henry is stunned. There's no spark, no smile, no sense of fate unfolding, just an awkward silence. He leaves the room quietly, his cloak trailing behind him, and for the first time, the king begins to doubt. Later, he tells his courtiers, she is nothing like the portrait. His voice is clipped, his mood stormy. She has no beauty, she has no charm, I like her not. But the wedding is already planned. Anne continues with grace. She attends banquets, meets noble women, wears the jewels prepared for her. She does not complain. She simply continues, politely. And politely it becomes clear. Henry is avoiding her. He delays the wedding once, then again. He blames the calendar, then the weather, then a diplomatic issue. But everyone knows the truth. The king, who once declared her perfect, now winces at her name. And Anne? Anne says nothing. She walks the palace gardens alone, nods to servants, smiles at children, writes letters home. She does not sulk. She does not chase him. She waits. Let the snow melt from the rooftops. Let the bells ring softly from the chapel tower. Because finally, Henry gives in. The marriage must go forward. The alliance is too valuable. The court is watching. The deal is done. And so, a date is set. The bride is dressed. The chapel is readied. And Anne walks down the aisle with no sign of fear, no sign of heartbreak, only quiet certainty. Sleep now. The Queen has arrived. The crown is near. But what matters most? Anne is not trying to capture anyone. She is simply here. And sometimes that's the most dangerous kind of power. Let the chapel candles flicker. Let the bells ring softly overhead. Let the velvet cushions be dusted and the gowns laid flat. It's January 6th, 1540. Wedding day. Anne of Cleves is up early. Her women dress her slowly, layer by layer. Ivory linen, gold embroidery, a crown of rubies. They comb her hair, perfume her hands, lower her veil. She looks into the mirror and does not smile. Not from fear, not from sadness, from stillness. The king has not visited, not since that awkward encounter in Rochester. He has made his displeasure known, but not to her. Still, Anne hears the silence and understands it. She always has. At the far end of the palace, Henry prepares too. He grumbles. He sighs. He tells his closest men, "If it weren't for diplomacy, I would not go through with it." But duty is louder than doubt. And so the ceremony begins. They stand side by side at the altar. She is calm. He is tight-jawed. She says her vows clearly. He stumbles once, then recovers. And then they are man and wife, king and queen, married, if not quite united. The court claps. The priests bless. The musicians begin to play. Anne curtsies. Henry offers his arm. They walk down the aisle like every other royal couple. But between their shoulders, a quiet space lingers. The feast is lavish. Platters of roast swan, sugar sculptures of castles and lions, wine that never stops flowing. Anne eats little. Henry drinks more than usual. And when the dancing begins, they watch from opposite ends of the hall. A marriage sealed in title, but not in feeling. That night the royal bedchamber is readied. Rose petals, silken sheets, candles set low, a room made for closeness, but no closeness comes. The king enters. Briefly, he speaks a few words. Nothing warm. Anne, ever proper, sits quietly at the edge of the bed. She tries to speak. He answers vaguely. Then he retires to another chamber. In the morning he tells his advisers, "She is no virgin. I like her not. I cannot perform my duty." They nod, though they know it is not about her. It is about disappointment, expectation crumpling beneath reality. Anne says nothing. To no one. She wakes, dresses, attends to her duties. She is queen now, and if the king regrets it, he'll have to be the one to undo it. Days pass, then weeks. There are no children, no affection, no visits after dark. Henry grows colder. Anne grows quieter, but not sullen. She listens. She learns. She adapts. At court she is polite but distant. She makes no demands, takes no favorites, smiles at the king when necessary, but never chases him. It's not defiance, it's patience. And patience, when worn elegantly, can be mistaken for power. Let the wind whistle through the long stone corridors. Let the guards shift outside her chamber. Inside, Anne is writing a letter to her brother, plain, respectful, not a complaint, just an update. "The king has been gracious," she writes. That's all. And then she seals it and sends it. In the king's chamber, the complaints continue. She smells. She has no conversation. She does not stir my blood. None of it is truly true, and none of it is truly the point. He is not angry at Anne. He is angry that she didn't match the portrait, that she didn't fall for him, that she wasn't moved by his surprise entrance, his story, his charms. He feels rejected, and so he retreats. The court begins to whisper. The marriage is a shell, a crown with no connection. And Anne, she does not respond. She is the quietest queen they've ever had, and perhaps the cleverest. Sleep now. The wedding is done. The vows have been said. But the game is just beginning. And Anne, who smiles politely through silence, is about to do the most unthinkable thing of all. Nothing. Let the castle settle into silence. The feast has ended. The candles burn low. The music fades into quiet. And behind a heavy carved door, in the Queen's chambers, the fire still flickers. Anne sits by the hearth, not anxious, not giddy, just still. The maids have helped her undress, her gown folded away, her hair unpinned, a light robe wrapped across her shoulders. They wait, unsure, then bow and retreat, leaving her alone, waiting for the king. He doesn't come right away. She knows he won't. It's been days since he looked her in the eye. Since the awkward meeting in Rochester, he's been distant. Since the wedding, he's been colder still. She rises, walks to the window. The gardens are silver with moonlight. The air is cool, and behind her the door creaks open. Soft footsteps. A cough. The king enters. Anne turns, curtsies slightly. He gives a stiff nod. No smile. No greeting. He says a few words, something about the feast, the weather, a comment on her gown. She answers politely, then silence. He doesn't sit, doesn't touch her hand, doesn't ask her anything at all, just lingers near the fire for a few long minutes, then turns and leaves. The door closes behind him, and Anne does nothing. She doesn't cry. She doesn't call after him. She simply returns to the hearth and pours herself a cup of wine. The next morning the king tells his advisers, "I like her not. She is no maid. She is nothing like her portrait." His tone is sharp, his pride bruised. They nod carefully, because the truth isn't about Anne, it's about Henry. He expected affection, admiration, attraction. Instead, he found courtesy, distance, and a queen who didn't chase him. Anne says nothing. She dresses, attends Mass, smiles at the duchesses, listens in council. There's no mention of the night, and no complaint. The days pass. Henry stays away. No visits, no gifts, no touches. He sends word through servants, declines invitations, refers to her now only as Madam. The court notices and whispers. Some blame Anne, some blame the painter, most blame no one. Because this is not a scandal. Not yet. It's a silence, and silence is harder to define. Anne walks the gardens alone, reads in the afternoons, practices her English with a quiet tutor. She is not cold. She is simply unavailable. The king grows more frustrated. He complains of her accent, her clothing, her lack of spark. He tells Cromwell, his most trusted adviser, this marriage will not do. Cromwell reminds him, the alliance is vital. The Cleves family is powerful. The people like Anne. But Henry isn't interested in strategy. He wants something else. And Anne? Anne continues on. She writes letters to her brother. Simple, factual. I am treated with courtesy, she writes. I am healthy. The weather is mild. She does not mention the king, not out of fear, out of understanding, because some, when they feel rejected, seek revenge. But Anne does something else. She gives him nothing to fight. Let the fire burn low again. Let the tapestries stir with a breeze. In the Queen's chambers Anne lies awake, not restless, not worried, just awake, watching the shadows play across the ceiling, listening to the soft crackle of wood. She's not planning anything, not yet, but she's watching, waiting. And in her stillness something begins to take shape, a new kind of escape, not through defiance, through permission. The king will try to end the marriage, that much is clear, but what he doesn't know is that Anne will let him, gladly, sleep now. The castle is quiet. The king sulks in his chamber. The court stirs with quiet rumors, and Anne, Queen of England, lies in a bed where no one visits, and dreams of something rarer than love, freedom. Let the morning bells ring low across the palace. Let the guards change shifts with slow footsteps. Let the fire in the Queen's chamber crackle and then die down, because something is shifting. Anne is still here, but she is beginning to vanish. Not from the court, not from her title, just from the king. She wakes each morning with purpose, dresses simply, wears no new jewels, speaks to her maids in soft German. She walks the same garden paths, reads the same psalms, nods politely to the nobles who still bow when she passes. But something is different. Anne isn't trying anymore, and the king notices. He expects pursuit, apologies, tears, a wife desperate to be loved. Instead, she gives him distance, respectful silence, polite eyes that never linger too long. She never complains, never protests. She just lets him go. He sends fewer messages, then none. She responds exactly as expected, graciously, calmly, without resistance. The courtiers whisper, she's giving up. But Anne isn't surrendering. She's choosing absence. And for a man like Henry, used to being the center of gravity, that absence becomes louder than any argument. He confesses to Cromwell, I cannot bring myself to touch her. She has no allure for me. But underneath the words, something else. Not scorn, confusion. She's done nothing wrong. She hasn't disobeyed. She hasn't insulted him. And yet, she won't chase, won't grovel, won't try to make him change his mind. Let the sunlight stretch across the great hall. Let the tapestries flutter with spring air. Anne walks past the king without ceremony. She curtsies once, smiles faintly, and continues on. No lingering glance, no hope in her voice, just permission. He can go, and suddenly he's not sure he wants to. He begins to test her. Small things. Requests for dinners that he cancels at the last minute. Servants told to watch her. Rumors started that she still harbors feelings, that she's secretly conspiring, and does nothing to defend herself because there is nothing to defend. She isn't angry. She isn't scheming. She simply exists, unbothered, unburdened, ungraspable. This is the beginning of ghosting, but not the modern kind. This is something older, a woman removing her energy, her effort, her investment, and letting the silence speak louder than confrontation. At night, Henry complains again. She is too dull. She does not stir me. Still, he hasn't acted, because some part of him is still waiting for a response, a plea, an emotion. But Anne has already made her move by stepping back. She speaks more to her ladies now, keeps a small journal, reads histories of other queens, the tragic ones, the clever ones, the ones who vanished in other ways. And sometimes she smiles because she knows which story she is writing. The title of queen still belongs to her, but she no longer wears it like armor. She wears it like silk, light, effortless, lovely, and it slips easily from her shoulders whenever she chooses. In early May, Henry tells his council, I wish to end the marriage, not with rage, with weariness. He's tired of the awkward silences, tired of the performance, tired of waiting for her to play the part he imagined. He sends a message to Anne, a formal suggestion of annulment. It's carefully worded, dignified, neutral. He expects resistance, tears, fear. He receives none of those, just a quiet reply. If it pleases His Majesty, I will accept what is right and honorable. No fight, no protest, not even surprise. Anne agrees to the annulment without hesitation, and in that moment, Henry is ghosted completely. She was there, and now she is not. No rage, no rebellion, only a quiet exit. From his affections, from his courtship, from his reach. Let the moon rise above the gardens now. Let the quill rest on the parchment. Anne has said yes to freedom, to reinvention, to something far safer than love. Distance. Sleep now. The queen is still wearing the crown, but only for a moment longer. Soon she'll return it, not out of defeat, but as a woman who chose her own ending. Let the bells stay silent this morning. Let the gowns remain in their wardrobes. Let the throne room doors stay closed, because there will be no royal parade today. No crowds, no tears, just parchment, ink, a name signed, once, and everything changes. The message comes softly. The king wishes to discuss the marriage. Anne reads it once, then once more. She folds the letter neatly and sets it down without a word. She knew this would come, knew it in the spaces between glances, in the stillness of his voice, in the cold air of their unvisited chambers. This marriage wasn't a war. It was a misunderstanding, and Anne was done trying to explain herself. Henry's men arrive, serious, cautious. They expect resistance, denial, maybe a quiet sob behind a silk handkerchief. But Anne doesn't cry. She listens, she nods. She says softly, If it is His Majesty's will, I accept it. They blink. That's it? No argument? No heartbreak? Just a agreement? Yes, just that. Because Anne had already let the crown go, long before anyone came to take it. The reasons are read aloud. The king never consummated the marriage. The match was made under political pressure. There was no true affection. She's not blamed. She's not insulted. It's handled delicately, because Anne never gave them anything but dignity. The annulment is granted. No trial, no scandal, no whisper of shame. She simply becomes something else. Not queen, but not disgraced. Instead, the king's beloved sister. That's her new title, a generous one, a clever one, because it gives her rank, status, a place at court, without danger, without expectations. She becomes family, not obligation, and Anne smiles, because being the king's sister is far safer than being his wife. And then comes the gift, or rather, the reward, a generous income, multiple estates, a private household, rooms at the palace should she ever wish to visit. In short, freedom, wrapped in velvet and sealed with a golden crest. Let the ink dry now. Let the candle burn low. Anne sits at her writing desk that evening. No crown, no gown, just a robe, a quill, a small content smile. She writes to her brother, "The marriage is ended in peace. I am treated with honor and kindness. I lack nothing." And it's true. She has what no queen before her ever received. Not love, not legacy, but peace. Henry in his own chamber mutters to his advisers, "She is a good woman. I respect her." It's more than he said of most, and certainly more than he gave others. The court is puzzled. No drama, no banishment, no sorrowful procession. Anne attends church the next morning in a simple gown, still escorted, still bowed to, still smiling, just no longer queen, and she is more visible now than ever. She joins the king for dinners. She walks with the princesses. She speaks kindly to Henry's children, even those not her own. Mary, Elizabeth, Edward. They call her Madam with respect. And slowly, the court stops whispering, because Anne isn't fading. She's flourishing. Let the gardens bloom. Let the birds sing again. Let summer begin to spread across the countryside. Anne travels now, to her estates, to her gardens, to her books. She lives in comfort, in safety, and perhaps most remarkably, in choice. She never remarried, not because no one asked, but because she never had to say yes again. And as Henry moves on to wife number 5, then 6, the court watches queens come and go, but Anne remains, seated, smiling, safe, the one who ghosted the king and walked away with everything. Sleep now. The annulment is over. The crown has passed. But Anne's real story is only just beginning. A life not ruled by power, but by freedom. And all she had to do was let go. Let the doors close softly behind her. No court fanfare, no exile, no tears. Anne of Cleves walks away from the crown and straight into comfort. They give her a new home, several in fact, a manor in Richmond, a palace in Bletchingley, rooms in any royal residence she chooses. She's no longer Queen of England, but she's the only former queen still alive, still welcome, still respected. And that is a kind of crown all its own. The court watches curiously. They expected sorrow, but Anne seems content. She doesn't withdraw. She doesn't scheme. She simply lives. She arranges her households like little courts, neatly run, kindly staffed. No drama, no excess. Visitors come often. Ambassadors, artists, ladies of the court. Not for gossip, but for her company. Anne laughs more freely now, eats what she likes, rides when she pleases. She hosts small dinners, quiet candlelit evenings full of gentle conversation. No politics, no performances, just peace. She writes letters, short, careful ones, to her family in Cleves, to Mary and Elizabeth, the king's daughters. She signs them not as queen, but as someone freer, the king's beloved sister, a title no one else ever earned. Henry, now married again, wife number 5, keeps his distance, but never far. He sends her gifts at New Year, includes her name in public prayers, mentions her with a curious warmth. Anne is the only one who left him, and didn't lose everything. And perhaps, deep down, even Henry knows she was the wisest of them all. Let the summer breeze move through the gardens. Let the bees hum softly above the herbs. Anne walks the paths slowly. She knows every rose bush by name. She kneels in the dirt sometimes, uncaring of her gown. She plants things, watches them grow, because unlike thrones and titles, gardens stay. She plays cards with her ladies, reads romances in French, keeps a greyhound who sleeps at the foot of her bed. She lives like a widow who never had to grieve, because she let go before there was anything to mourn. One day, a messenger arrives, a formal letter from the king himself. He invites her to court for a feast, for a wedding, for a Christmas masque. She thinks for a moment, then sends her reply. It would be my pleasure should His Majesty still wish it. Polite, warm, distant, always just enough. When she returns to court, heads turn. She is no longer queen, but she carries herself as if nothing was lost. She embraces the princesses, chats softly with nobles, smiles when the king approaches, and he smiles back, not with longing, with something rarer, respect. The courtiers watch, whisper. Some say she's lucky, others say she's clever, but Anne doesn't listen. She's already decided who she is, and it doesn't require their approval. Let the music swell gently from the palace windows. Let the torches flicker against the dusk. Anne dances once that night, just once. Not with the king, not with a suitor, with a friend. A quiet moment, a glimmer of light. Then she returns to her rooms. No need to stay longer. She's not trying to impress anyone. Not anymore. Back in her manor, Anne receives her accounts. Her estates are thriving, her staff loyal, her table full. She's no longer a royal consort. She's something better, a woman no one controls. Years pass. Queens come and go. Catherine Howard, Catherine Parr. More marriages, more heartbreak, more history written in ink and blood. But Anne is still here, still smiling, still safe. She rides to Hampton Court once a season, keeps a painting of herself near the hearth, writes small poems in the margins of her prayer book. Nothing dramatic, just traces of a life well lived. Let your breath slow now. Let your thoughts drift. Anne has stepped out of the story the world expected her to follow and into something softer, quieter, but no less powerful. She was never crowned in the way they imagined, but somehow she ended up more royal than anyone else. Let the halls grow dim. Let the gowns change styles. Let the court bustle with new names, new whispers, new stories. But in the background, Anne remains. She is no longer queen. She no longer wears a crown, but she is still here, not hidden, not forgotten, just quietly enduring. Meanwhile, the king begins again. A new bride, Catherine Howard, young, beautiful, barely 17, a cousin of Anne Boleyn. And Henry? He is eager once more, eager to be adored, to feel youthful, to forget the quiet disappointment of his last marriage. But the court sees it. He's older now, slower, prone to storms of mood and aching legs. And Catherine? She is not a queen in the mold of Anne. She is loud laughter, perfumed letters, careless eyes that wander. Anne watches it all unfold from a distance. She receives the news in letters, in whispers from visitors, in careful words at formal dinners. She says nothing unkind, nothing at all. She simply sips her wine and lets history pass her by. And then it happens again. The downfall. Not hers, Catherine's. The affair, the investigation, the swift, silent fall from favor. No feast this time, no music, only a name erased from prayer books. And once again, Henry is alone. Anne is not surprised. She knows the rhythms of power, the way affection can turn, the way queens are chosen and then discarded. But she stepped out of that rhythm and found stillness. Henry marries once more, Catherine Parr, older, educated, kind, a nurse more than a lover. And Anne, she sends a gift, a small token, a book of psalms bound in soft leather. No note, no signature, just a quiet gesture of goodwill. They say Catherine thanked her, privately, sincerely, because among the circle of queens, former, fallen, forgotten, Anne is different. She survived, not just in body, in dignity. Let the seasons turn now. Let the roses fall and bloom again. Anne tends her gardens, oversees her kitchens, reads long into the night. She attends court when invited, always gracious, always well dressed, always just distant enough. Sometimes Henry calls her my sister Anne. Sometimes he forgets her name in conversation, but he never removes her allowance, never takes back her lands, never speaks a cruel word against her, because even he knows Anne played the game differently and won. The years begin to weigh on the king, his steps slower, his words more bitter, and Anne, never his love, never his enemy, becomes one of the few figures in his life who never caused him pain. She visits the royal children from time to time, Mary, serious, devout, Elizabeth, bright-eyed, watchful. Anne teaches them embroidery, reads to them in French, tells them stories from her home across the sea. They respect her. They admire her because she has nothing to gain and still chooses to be kind. No one remembers the painting anymore, the one that brought her here, the portrait that made the king choose her. It still hangs in a quiet gallery, but no one asks if it truly looked like her, because it doesn't matter now. What matters is what Anne became. Once the portrait was forgotten, she became herself. Let your breath settle now. Let the pages of history turn gently. Anne of Cleves is no longer a queen, but she is something rarer, a woman who walked away from power and found peace. Let the fire burn low in the great hall. Let the velvet cushions fade with use. Let the crowns change heads once more, because time passes and few are allowed to stay. But Anne of Cleves, she stays. Henry's world begins to dim. He's older now, tired, slower in step, shorter in breath. His court has changed. Many of his advisors are gone. The laughter of earlier years has turned to silence and sighs. And his wives? Most are gone too. Two lost to execution, two to childbirth, one to death. But one remains. Anne. She is no longer young, but age suits her. She has lines around her eyes now, not from sorrow, but from smiling. She moves with careful ease. She laughs gently at the politics she no longer has to play, and she is still welcomed at court, not as a queen, as something gentler, a survivor. She visits less often now, but when she does, the guards bow with real respect. The courtiers stand taller. She walks with measured grace, her dresses plainer than they once were, her voice low, clear, never hurried. She speaks little of the past. She doesn't need to. She lived it. In the gardens of Chelsea, she sits under the wisteria, listens to the birds, reads poetry. Sometimes she hums old songs from Cleves, songs no one else remembers. She doesn't speak of Henry often, but when she does, it is without bitterness. He was a great king, she says, and a complicated man. That's all. No gossip, no rehashing, just stillness. She receives letters from Princess Mary, now nearly queen in her own right, from Elizabeth, bright and careful as ever, from foreign noblewomen asking her opinion on English customs. She answers each one slowly with her own hand. No secretaries, only her. Let the palace grow quiet now, because the king is dying. The court is tense, the corridors hushed. No one dares to speak of what comes next. But Anne already knows. She has always known how endings feel. When Henry dies, the bells ring low. The streets fill with black. His will is read, his memory wrapped in myth. But amid all the mourning, Anne does not weep. She simply closes her windows and sits watching the sky. She is given a place at the new court, still respected, still titled. Now the only living wife of Henry VIII. A quiet title, a strange legacy, but hers. She walks through the palace gardens one spring afternoon. A young noble stops her. "You knew the king," he says, awestruck. "You were his wife." She pauses, smiles faintly. "For a time," she says, "but he was never mine." And that's the truth. She didn't keep the king. She didn't want to. She kept her name, her freedom, herself. She is by then a symbol of something rare. A woman who did not break, did not fall, did not fight for what she never truly wanted. A woman who stepped back and was better for it. Let the tapestries fade. Let the paintings grow dusty. Let the echoes of Henry's court slip quietly into memory. Anne's rooms are still warm, still filled with books, still soft with candlelight. And sometimes, if the wind is right, the maids say they can hear her humming, softly, contentedly. She never remarried, never returned to Cleves, never re-entered the dangerous theater of royal romance. She didn't need to. She had already written her ending, not with a sword, not with a scandal, not even with a love story, but with a refusal to become what they wanted, and a gentle, knowing ghosting of a king. Sleep now. The queen who wasn't, but always remained, is resting in her chair, hands folded, eyes closed, not forgotten, not erased, just quiet. Let the windows flicker with low candlelight. Let the wind pass softly through the long stone corridors. This is the final chapter, not of Anne's life, but of her becoming. The world begins to change without her. Mary becomes queen, then Elizabeth. The church reshapes. The palace echoes with new voices, new politics. And Anne? She listens, reads the letters, hears the names. But she is no longer a player in the story. She is the quiet chapter they always remember. Visitors still come. Young ladies curious to meet the woman who'd once worn the crown. Ambassadors still polite to the sister of the late king. Even nobles with vague memories of a foreign bride who never caused trouble and never needed rescuing. They find her gentle, wise, and perhaps a little unknowable, because Anne never wrote memoirs, never declared herself wronged, never made speeches, but everyone knew what she'd done. She'd said no, quietly, and she'd lived. She became a small kind of myth, the queen who never loved the king, who didn't fight him, didn't flee from him, didn't fall to him. She simply let go. And in return, she was given something that not even crowns can guarantee: a full, safe life. Let the fire settle into soft embers. Let the candle burn its final inch. Anne grows older, grayer, slower, but never bitter, never afraid. On her final day, the windows are open. The garden is full of light. A breeze moves gently through the herbs. A servant brings tea, unaware it will go cold. Anne is seated in her chair, hands folded, a small smile on her lips. And then, stillness. She is buried with dignity. In Westminster Abbey, among kings and queens, no grand procession, no mourning crowds, just a gentle passing, and a record in the royal books. Anne of Cleves, fourth wife of Henry, quiet, honored, departed in peace. And that truly is the whole story. No scandal, no downfall, no legend carved in drama, just survival, refusal, freedom. She flirted with no one, begged nothing, fought no wars. Her power was her absence, and that's what makes her unforgettable. Let the portrait fade, let the records close, let the palace doors drift quietly shut. Anne remains, not in noise, but in stillness, not in heartbreak, but in endurance, not in love, but in her refusal to pretend. She is the queen who ghosted the king, and somehow she is the only one he never truly forgot. Sleep now. The story is done. The crown has passed. The court is quiet. But in the hush that remains, there is Anne, smiling, sensible, still, exactly where she chose to be. Good night, dear dreamer.